All right, so how's everyone doing? Corey here with the Long Island Lacrosse Journal and FLG. I'm sitting down with Michele Brower, who's the owner of LI Tutoring and Enrichment. Michele, it's really nice to have you here on a little bit of a Zoom call.
Thank you. It's nice
How,
to be here.
how everyone healthy? You guys holding up okay over there?
Yeah, so far so good.
Well, it's we were talking about this earlier. It's definitely a little stressful time, and in your world, I can only imagine what some of the families, boys and girls, are going through from an academic side of things. We deal mostly with athletes that are student athletes, so they might be going to play college lacrosse and whatnot. And some kids, they haven't even taken a test. They're preparing for tests that get canceled. Like a lot of kids are in the same situation, but it doesn't make it any better. So
Right.
how have you kind of tried to alleviate some of the concerns as parents reach out and say, hey, like what's going on here?
Well, I mean, the best I could do is first tell them not to freak out, because like you said, everybody is in the same boat and all of the kids are experiencing this together. So that should give them some comfort. From all the literature that I've been reading, both SAT and ACT and colleges and universities, they're all trying to do what they can to not just keep students healthy and safe during the virus, during the pandemic, but also to try to offer them as many opportunities as they can to be able to take the exams and to apply to schools on time. So, the biggest, like I said, the biggest thing I could do is talk to parents and students, especially in our one-on-one sessions, and try to explain to them that even though, like just yesterday, SAT canceled the June exam.
Mm-hmm.
And so the next test that they have is August. But again, when I spoke to parents yesterday and this morning, explaining to them that, the SAT has their exam in August, but now they're adding more tests. They're going to add another test in September to try to accommodate so they can give a test every month from August to December. With my ACT students, I explained to them that we still have the June ACT. So to stay focused and keep, preparing every week to try to get themselves ready for June. There's also the July exam. Then there's the September test. ACT is talking about adding an August test as well. So just try to alleviate some of the stress by explaining to them that these companies are trying the tests and the colleges are trying to accommodate students as best as they can to make their lives as least stressful as possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. And I'm kind of curious, just in your opinion, because maybe, like we were talking about, something like this hasn't really happened yet. But, if let's say the SAT did go off August, September, October, like consistently month after month, could that in a way maybe benefit some students? So that way they're not like, oh, like I bombed this one, I got to wait like 3 months and
Right.
or I got to wait 6 months to take another one. Like, do you think that could possibly help a student?
Absolutely. Because statistically, with the next test that students take, their scores go up. So the more opportunities a student has to take a test, the better chance they have of getting a higher score. So definitely it helps. I think also it can alleviate some of the pressure that they can get it finished in a certain amount of time, that they don't have to wait, for months to find out how their scores, or how they're going to do. The ACT as well is doing that, where they're going to give them a lot of opportunities to take the test. So it definitely can benefit because it will give them an opportunity to super score. A lot of schools, super scoring is the process by which they take the best score from each section of a test, and they'll allow a student to put those scores together, and that could be like the score that they send to colleges. So obviously the more opportunities they have to take an exam, the more opportunity they have to super score or to just do better even in just one whole sitting. So it definitely could be to their benefit.
That's really interesting. Now, whether you're taking an ACT in June or even if it gets bumped back to July, like what should kind of students be really focused on right now if they do need to take a standardized test at some point in the near future? And, what could they be doing to maximize the potential and the opportunity to do well on these tests whenever they end up taking them?
So the way we have our kids in our program work to prepare to do the best that they can is to obviously if they have the opportunity to do one-on-one tutoring like they do with us, that helps. We have students do homework, whether it's through workbooks, through worksheets, take practice tests. Now, before all of this, students are able to come to the office and take proctored, timed practice exams. That's a huge part of getting stronger and getting better. obviously now they can't come to the office until we're all able to be back together again. So they will take their practice test at home. So I do encourage kids to, if they are practicing at home, if they are doing it without a tutor, let's say, or some kind of prep program, to just make sure that they're doing a little bit every day. That's always the biggest thing I always try to instill in our students, is the consistency when you're preparing for something like this. Whether the test is in June, which is a couple of months from now, or July, or even August, which sounds so far away, but really isn't that far away, to do a little bit every day, even if it's 20 minutes a day, like any athlete would train. You know, like a lot of kids, they can't be with their trainers right now. They can't be, you know, practicing on the field right now, but they should still every day be doing something. Maybe take a day off, you know, to just chill and do nothing, give their body a rest. But otherwise, they really should be training every day. And really, it's the same thing. Like if you're training for a marathon, you want to run a little every day and, you know, give yourself a break every now and then. But it's that consistency that makes you stronger and makes you more confident. And also just mentally, emotionally, to give these kids a routine during this time when everything is so up in the air, to have that, you know, consistent thing that they'll have to do every day, helps them get through this too as well. Not just academically, but mentally, emotionally, to get through this.
That's really good advice. I was just thinking, so let's say I'm a student and I got to take a practice test, and normally I would have come to your office, which is great because you create that environment that's kind of similar to the exam itself. But now I'm home and I'm trying to take this exam. Like, can you just give me a couple simple things that I can do to simulate that environment of like, all right, I'm like in maybe your office or I'm in a classroom and actually taking the test? Like, what's something simple that, you know, these kids at home can do to kind of create that environment?
To create the environment of being in the office?
Of being like in kind of like a prep, like if like of taking a practice test, so to speak. Like, are there certain things, like you mentioned, like things are timed, like can, you know, should a kid like throw up his cell phone and like time it? Like,
Absolutely.
How do you kind of simulate that?
So we do have, like, I still have kids, like we've been putting packets together for students each week. So all the kids in the program, that's definitely been quite a challenge on my end to, like, you know, have envelopes for every single child. So we create packets for every kid, giving them workbooks, and in those packets we have practice tests. So typically they would be coming to the office on like a Saturday morning or a Sunday morning, and the proctor would administer every kid has their own practice test depending on where they're at in the program when they started. So everybody's at a different spot. But they're all sitting there taking a practice test. So to simulate that at home, we have a practice test for them to do with the answer sheet. And so and I give them instructions on, you know, when to take a break, when, you know, how long that break should be. And so either they can have their mom or dad or brother or sister time them, which not everybody is so keen on. So then they could also do, there's like a YouTube video where they have like a virtual proctor telling them, okay, 5 minutes to go. And so you could put that on your laptop or your cell phone to help you. And if you don't have those, you could just do a timer on your phone. But taking that simulated practice test at home is especially helpful. And also just, you know, the one-on-one, we do the way we do our sessions now that we obviously can't be next to each other and together in the office. Now we do online tutoring. So that could simulate as close as possible to our one-on-one sessions that they would have here, where we do either Skype or FaceTime. We also have this online whiteboard system that I use called Scribbler, where like it's really, really helpful for math. So you can do a split screen. And so the kids will be Skyping on one side, and then they have this interactive whiteboard where I can do the math on there, and then they could write on it as well. And so that, although again, not the same as being in front of each other, is helping to simulate the process as well.
That's great. And now some students that are out there around the island, they might be doing tutoring for, let's say, another group or individual that does it. Some people have never done tutoring and maybe should. Do you mind just giving us some signs on like what, you know, signs of a good tutoring company that does it right, that cares about the kids, versus maybe some signs that are like, okay, these are red flags, like stay away?
Well, I always tell parents, like whenever, like, cause I will get phone calls, you know, when parents have heard about us, their friends, almost all of, so much, I shouldn't say all of it, but so much of our clientele is word of mouth, is friends, you know, telling other friends, you have to go with this tutor, they've been great. So when I talk to parents and I tell them about what we do and how we run the program, I always do say to them, listen, you don't have to make the decision right now. But when you do talk to other companies, some of the things one of the major things you should check for is that they offer practice tests. So you can have the best tutor, you can have a wonderful tutor one-on-one, and they're excellent. But if your child doesn't have the opportunity to sit and take timed practice tests, there's only so far they could go, because you have to take all of that material and now apply it to a test and getting better at the practices. We have kids taking 5-6 practice tests before they even start to get the hang of it. And so that's a big component, I think, to a successful overall program is the implementing of practice tests and as part of the process. I also encourage parents to go to, like, our company. What makes us very different from other companies is that all of my tutors are New York State certified teachers with experience. And so the reason for that is, in my opinion, and through my 20 plus years of doing this, you could be a very strong math person. You could be great at math, really advanced in math, but that doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be able to teach it well in a way that any kind of learner can grasp it. And you also have to be able to monitor and adjust depending on the kind of student that you have. So just because a child is really, really strong in school doesn't necessarily mean that they're going to be really strong with standardized tests. And so you as a teacher have to be able to modify everything based on that individual student. And I believe that teachers are the best at doing that, because that's what you're getting trained to do, through all of your schooling, to be able to, understand each child and teach effectively to each individual student, or whether it's or small group, to be able to read the room. And so that's a huge thing I always tell parents to look for is, what kind of tutors do they have? Are they are they teachers, certified teachers? So those are two big things. I also my advice would be to avoid any company that makes promises that they can get your child to get a certain score. Because I've had parents ask me that. I'm like, well, they'll say, can you promise that my kid will get, a 31 or 32? Absolutely not. I will not promise that. And I always tell parents, I don't have magic pixie dust. Our kids that come through here do very, very well. That's why we're so successful. But it is not because I have, this magic pixie dust I could sprinkle on your kid's head and they're going to do really well. They have to do well. I think what makes us so successful is that we're always, we're very involved in each and every one of our students. And so we, it's that relationship that we have with them, that we really care about each kid and how they do. And the parents also, parents are a huge part of this process. And so that individual attention that we give is also very important to the success of our business and what does make us different from other companies. So, if you're calling a company and they're making all these promises that they can't keep, I would definitely avoid that as well, because nobody can promise that. It's a process. Both the student and the tutor together, have to get them to that, goal score.
Yeah, and I'm sure even besides, forget about guaranteeing anything, but even to project for a specific child, you really need to get to know them before you can say hey, based on my experience, your grades, your personality, how you learn, I kind of project that you could end up here. And you can't just say that meeting someone for the first time. And what I really like too, just about how your company set up, having certified teachers, is they're teaching all day, for the most part, every day during the school year. And they're getting experience working with different types of students on a daily basis, which in turn, I'm sure makes them better tutors. A lot of times, really, it might be a really bright person who has a job in the city, they're shooting out and they're tutoring someone. It's what they're doing during the day is completely different to how it might translate to tutoring at night, which
that's a great point.
I think is really smart. Yeah. So that's really cool. And I guess the transition for you, we talked a little bit earlier about simulating practice tests. How are some maybe other ways that you've adapted to virtual learning and keeping your students sharp and keeping them moving in the right direction? Because kind of who knows how much longer you might have to do this.
I mean, we do. One of the big parts of our program is I do treat this like a course, like a class. And so there's a curriculum that we follow. So like any kind of course, we give them homework to do. So at home, we give them worksheets, workbooks, and we assign specific things for them to do so that they're able to schedule a little bit every day for them to do at home. And then when we meet them in session, there's also vocab words that we give them. And we have them do, normally in session, we would have them do written quizzes, but because we can't do that, we have all of our vocabulary on Quizlet, which is, do you know Quizlet?
I've heard of it. I never like dove into it, but I've heard of it.
Quizlet's great because it's great for vocabulary. It's really great for any kind of so it's like online flashcards, and kids can take practice tests on them. There's online games that they can do on there, and so they'll take their vocab quizzes on Quizlet at home. Cool. And then when they meet with us for session, we go over that work. So they're held accountable for the work that they're doing every day when they're home, to try to keep them consistent, keep them, on track. And then we also go over their practice tests together. So it encourages them to take their practice tests at home, get that experience. So holding them accountable and going over everything that we assign for them that week in session helps keep them on track to do a little bit every day. That's
great. And, you work, as you mentioned, with so many different students, different types of students, a lot of one-on-one work. How do you kind of remain so consistent and patient, because again, it's not easy to adjust and figure out what makes maybe a student tick and what makes them improve, et cetera. So kind of how do you consistently do that?
I mean, that is actually one of the best parts of this job. The being with my students, that's the highlight of my job, especially as the owner of LITE. There's a lot that goes into it. There's a lot of talking with parents. There's a lot of preparation. I'm always modifying and adjusting the program to the changes that are going on with the SAT and the ACT. There's always new answer keys that I have to make. There's always, more curriculum that I have to, add. And so being able to work with the kids and that one-on-one time with them, or even if it's the small group that I have, that's my best part of the day. So even though I may be with the kid, and it feels like, you're with this kid every week for months and months, how do you stay patient or how do you stay focused? That's the best part. They're great, especially, during this time of the social distancing, which I absolutely, know is super important. The hardest part is that I don't get to see my students, in person. But then when we go on Skype or on FaceTime and they're smiling and, they tell me about their week and we get to talk a little bit before we dive into our work. It's great. You really get to, to understand them. And some kids I'll have from August till June, their entire junior year. And some kids I'll only have them for a few months. They'll start with me maybe over the summer before senior year, and then I have them through, the fall. But no matter how long I have them, there's definitely that connection that gets made very, very quickly. And so when they're done, when they're finished, and I get those texts like how well they did, or they got into this school or that school, and they say, thank you, that, makes this all worthwhile. I think I had said this to you one time, that one of my students, one of my kids, I got a perfect score, which was like one of the, highlights of my career. Obviously, his mother told me that the first thing he said when he saw his score, he said, I'm going to miss Michelle. I'm going to miss my sessions with Michelle. And that to me was like, that was so great to hear. Obviously I was so proud of him, but it shows that it meant a lot that, that weekly session, that one-on-one time, because it's not just learning the material, but you're helping them become stronger students. You're helping them be able to manage their workload. And you're helping them with something that seemingly in the beginning is like this impossible task to be able to do, not just get through these tests, but to do well. And then when you start to get them to really feel empowered and confident that they can get through this, it really bond, it creates a nice bond with you. So I definitely love what I do. It's never boring, and every kid is so different. So it's
That's
nice.
Awesome. Yeah. That one student that you told the story about should have got like a 1550. So you had a reason to come back and keep working with you guys.
Yeah. That was all good.
That's great. So one way, if it's okay with you to finish just the conversation, because we deal with a lot of athletes and, a big part of their process, and sometimes they may realize it, sometimes they may not realize it. The academic piece, how they do on their exams kind of like steers the ship. It's really their athletics in a way doesn't, they might get a lot of opportunities because of it. They might get visits to schools and they might build relationships and they might get offered even, an athletic scholarship, but a lot of times their grades and how they do in the classroom kind of steers everything. So what's maybe a piece of advice you can offer to a student athlete out there, regardless of the sport that they're playing, based on the situation and the circumstances, just so they can set themselves up for maybe, future success as they move through their process?
I mean, that's a very good point you bring up, because it's not just, back in the day, if you were a super stud athlete, it really didn't matter that much how you did in school because colleges really wanted you and you got to go to these top schools. But there's so much competition today.
Mm-hmm.
And there's so many great athletes, especially on Long Island, especially in lacrosse or really in so many sports. There are really, really strong student athletes on Long Island. So my advice always is to these students, and I get a lot of student athletes, a lot of lacrosse players. A lot of them I get to see, that you're highlighting. And that's always nice to see. And my advice always is to try to do the best you can in school. Even now, with a lot of students are doing their online learning, and it's definitely different from what they're used to in school. Some of my students are being overwhelmed by the workload, depending on the district they're in. Some kids are finding it a little bit more manageable. But just to stay on top of their work, to try to get the best grades they can get. Mm-hmm. And when it comes to standardized testing, so many of my students, they have to get a certain score to solidify their position on a team. Mm-hmm. Even if they're highly valued and they're really, really wanted, they still need a certain score. And the more, the higher level the college, the higher they have to do on their test. And so all of that plays a part in it. There's also a lot of sports like, I know baseball is one of them where you don't get as much athletic money. And so if you can score high enough on the ACT, for example, that will solidify some merit money, some academic money for you to help you, be able to get to go play at that school. Mm-hmm. And so that's a big part of it too. ACT, even more so than SAT, offers a lot of opportunities for you to get merit scholarship money. Mm. With every point higher, that could mean thousands of dollars more in merit money. Wow. And so I always talk to parents about that as well, because that's, something like a company like ours, it's an investment in your child's college future, because with every point, you can get so much more merit money, regardless of whether or not you're financially in need of money. You could get merit money it has nothing to do with financials. It has only academics. And so mm-hmm. I would encourage kids to try to push for that, not just to solidify their spot on the team, but for opportunities to get that merit money is also makes, more opportunities. You just want to have as many options as you can when it comes to college.
That's great. Well, Michele, we really appreciate your time and everything that you're doing for the Long Island community. And, we appreciate the advice and the insight too, because as you said, like it's a stressful time, but the more that you can deliver and communicate and offer in terms of knowledge and experience, it's always super helpful. So thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you for having me.